All right. So, welcome again, everyone, to this first gathering of disability justice and the Dharma. Want to give you a little bit of an overview of how our time together is going to flow. So, first, I'm going to offer some introductory words. Then, there's going to be a grounding and guided meditation. After that, we're going to have about a 10-minute comfort break. And I really mean that. Take about 10 minutes. If you need to stand up, if you need to visit the facilities, if you need to get a drink, if you need to let your dog out, whatever it is that you need to have happen in order to enhance your comfort, that's what you should feel free to do during that time. So after the comfort break, then I'm going to offer my sharings on the principle that we're working with today, intersectionality. After my sharings, I'm going to stop the recording and we're going to have the opportunity for community sharing. So that means that we'll have the opportunity I'll offer the opportunity for people to share in whatever way is right for you. Coming on a screen if you would like, knowing that you're not being recorded, and speaking with your voice, offering something in the chat if that's what's right for you, but also knowing that silence is also a welcome form of sharing. So after this sharing time, I'm going to start the recording again. I'll offer some closing information, a dedication of merit, and then for folks who want to stay around for it, I'll invite those who are comfortable to come off camera or to come on camera and participate in a community picture by means of a screenshot of anyone who wants to be on camera. So let's go ahead and launch into sort of our introductory information. So I just want to start by saying that in the canon of Shakyamuni Buddha, there's a story that Ananda approached the Buddha and said, this is half the spiritual life. This good friendship, this good companionship, this good comradeship, this is half the spiritual life. And the story says that Buddha says, oh no, don't say that. Don't say that, Ananda. This good friendship, this good companionship, this good comradeship, this is the entire spiritual life. So we are here to build community together, understanding our personal relationships with disability. And there are very unique challenges to building community in a virtual environment like this. Yet I'm inviting us all into that intention, into an exploration of what it's like to create that. Some suggestions on how this can carry forward when we're not together, in this virtual space, is to know that you can always carry this, whatever it was that most resonated with you, carry that with you into your daily life and your interactions with others, in whatever level feels comfortable for you. You can have it in the back of your mind as sort of an investigation as you interact with others who may have different bodies and different experiences with you. There may be times when you feel comfortable and called on to articulate something. And if that's comfortable for you, I invite that as well. So think how you can bring this into your daily life. We're recording this gathering. So that means that at any time you can come back and listen to something that particularly resonated with you and sort of re-experience it. I will be, for those who have registered, I've collected your emails. Those who've registered on Eventbrite, I've collected your emails. And for all those folks, after I have a chance to work with the recording, I will be creating a YouTube page where all the recordings will live. And I will also be posting the recordings on my website, sangaisall.org. So there will be multiple ways to re-access. The screenshot that I've offered to take at the end of all of us that care to participate, this is a way in which we can carry forward. I will be sharing the screenshot in a private blog that I'll describe in just a moment. So we can come back and look at each other again as a reminder. Oh, this is the community that is forming around disability justice. And then, as I said, there is a sort of a semi-private blog. It exists on the web, so as private as anything can be on the web. It's underneath Sangha Is All, but it's not linked to any of the public navigation for Sangha Is All. So only people that I share the link with, which I am putting the link right now in the chat, will have a direct idea of how to get to that blog. So you can come to the blog. There's a post in there now that's a welcome post. I'll be creating a post after this gathering that has a link to the YouTube, that has links to the quotations that I'm going to offer today, some of the wisdom sharing, that has the playlist for a comfort break. And you can feel free to post, comment, ask questions, do whatever using that blog. So it's so nice that I do know some people here, but a lot of you have never met me before. So I really want to introduce myself more fully and just let you know that obviously my name is Laura. I identify as a spiritual being incarnate in a body that is racialized, sexualized, and parsed into many other categories by the culture that I live in. While I reject for myself this kind of deconstruction, I also acknowledge and accept that this is the current norm and that these deconstructions have a real impact on my life and on the lives of others who live within these deconstructed categorizations imposed upon them. In case anyone has visual impairments, I'll offer an adaptive description. I am descended primarily from people in the western part of Asia, in the landmass that we call Europe. And that means that I have a light skin tone. It means that I have straight hair. And my hair is relatively light in color, except that I dye it purple at this time. And also from European heritage, I get to have lots of wrinkles as I age. I'm wearing glasses. I'm sitting in front of a big window with some plants behind me. And I'm really happy to be wearing this awesome purple t-shirt that says, once in a while, someone amazing comes along. And here I am. We all need this t-shirt. So in cultural terms, my body is considered femme, chronically ill and disabled. And in holistic and functional terms, My body is my teacher, it's my heroine, and it provides my spirit a beautiful and vibrant home in this relative world. I do not identify as an expert. I don't identify as a teacher or an enlightened one. So when I'm sitting here talking to you all today, I am simply a person who is practicing with the deconstructive identities that have been assigned to me. And I'm inviting you to practice with me in the same way. So, inviting self compassion, curiosity, just noticing what's resonant about all that and taking in, and being aware that as we go into further sharing, that's always the option for you, is to notice what's resonant, take in what's resonant, and set aside what doesn't fit. It feels important to me to offer a statement of privilege. I don't see this happening so often, but I have many privileges, some of which are conferred to me by nature of my ethnic heritage. Some are conferred to me by virtue of the fact that I was actually born into an able body, and later in life, I became disabled by chronic illness. So during my earlier years, I was able to accumulate certain experiences and resources that perhaps others don't have access to. And that means that what I share is always centered in that experience. And so I offer that as a way of saying, I don't have the same experience as everyone here. Sort of a global, sort of a global trigger warning, you know. I may very well step on something that feels important to you out of my ignorance, because I can only speak from the experiences that I've had and been able to metabolize. So I want to offer thanks and gratitude for uh, some of what's brought me to this path, my yoga teachers, Sins Invalid, for cultivating the brilliant principles of disability justice, um, for Kate Hatch, who first introduced me to them in 2020 in Bhumi Sparsha, for Bhumi Sparsha, for Earthworm Sangha and Heart With Sangha, which are communities I've been privileged to practice in. And throughout this gathering, I'll call in a number of wise beings, and I always say their names with gratitude and with deep bows. So I'd like at this time to go into a guided meditation, a grounding and guided meditation. So just inviting everyone to take a moment, take a breath, and consider what most supports you at this time as you go into a guided meditation. And it could be that literally what supports you is to be, I can't relax because I just realized I forgot. I just need to move this one thing. If you need to do that, that's what you need to do. Find your way into a calm um, place where you can access connection. If you need to lay down, whatever's right for you. And in that place, just starting with a connection to your breath. Noticing the breath moving in and out of the body. and noticing how your body moves, changes to receive the breath. Now your body moves, changes to allow the breath to flow out. And how this beautiful, life-giving practice of the body carries forward automatically without any thought required from you. And perhaps noticing where you most feel the breath in your body at this time. And letting a gentle awareness rest there. Perhaps also noticing what in your body at this moment feels the most solid, what has the most weight. Perhaps noticing where that part of your body is. It might be your sit bones, if you're sitting in a chair or sitting on the ground. It might be your feet, but it could be other parts of your body as well. It could be your hands, maybe your shoulders. So noticing what feels solid and heavy. And if it's accessible to you, just letting your breath explore that place or those places where your body feels heavy and solid. If it feels really supportive, comfortable to stay in relationship with those parts of your body right now, feeling free to do that, just affirming what's right for you. And suggesting that also, if it's right, you might bring into your awareness just whatever parts of your body are experiencing more of a lightness, a weightlessness. And for some of us, that might be the breath. For some of us, it might be the thoughts. But even if it's not something that I mention, when you hear the word weightlessness, if a certain area of your body comes forward into your awareness, just affirming that. That's where the weightlessness is right now. and letting your breath keep company with and explore that for a moment or two. And always affirming that whatever feels most supportive for you to keep company with, that's exactly the right place for you to be. You can stay there as long as you would like. And the suggestion that awareness might also touch upon any parts of the body that might feel tight, tense, knotted. And just having sort of this global, this growing whole awareness coming that there can be weighty and solid, there can be light and airy, there can be tight, tense. All of this can exist at the same time. And if it feels right to let your breath explore, just gently move with and soothe, unwind those places that are tight and tense, allowing that to move forward for a few breaths. And again, just sort of suggesting that we might refresh this global sense of the experience of the body, having all of these elements present at the same time, with your awareness here to keep them company, your breath here to keep them company, and always knowing that whatever it's right for you to stay with is exactly where you need to be. inviting in a sense or an awareness of those places where you might sense what's loose in your body, what might feel perhaps disengaged, even deactivated. And perhaps just allowing your breath to gently visit those places and maybe even pillow them as they rest, as they are loose, as they experience deactivation. And always knowing that your breath is there for you to rest with, to rely upon, no matter what is asking for your awareness in your body right now. And refreshing sort of this global sense of the body as having all of these elements, all of these experiences present at the same time. And you being there to keep all of that company with the support of your breath. Into this global awareness of all of these experiences, all of these elements present in your body. Perhaps even allowing yourself to become aware of any places where you might feel pain, where you might feel discomfort of any level of severity. Allowing your breath to travel to those places, to pillow them, to stroke them, to soothe them, to acknowledge them. These are the places where I am experiencing pain right now in my body. Resting with your breath and the awareness that touches that with gentleness. And finally, inviting an awareness of any places where your body feels ease, where your body feels positivity, relaxation, maybe even joy. Just being aware that these places in your body exist along all those other experiences, all those other places in your body. Keeping company with all of it, with your breath, keeping company with all of it, with your awareness, and enjoying a few final moments of silence. Slowly allowing the practice that you are engaged in now to come to a close, and noticing whatever it is your body might be calling for at this moment. It could be stretching or yawning, twisting, turning, having a drink, standing up, moving around, laying down. Whatever it is that your body is asking for, if you have the capacity to provide that, feeling free to go ahead and do that. So for copyright reasons, I will pause the recording while I turn on some music for our comfort break. Welcome everyone back, and just saying thank you for your patience with my weird sharing, and moving into our wisdom sharing time. And so, first I will share, and then we'll have an opportunity for community sharing. So I've just posted in the chat the principle of disability justice that we're going to be working with today, intersectionality, and I will read that as well. We do not live single issue lives. It's a quote from Audre Lorde. Ableism, coupled with white supremacy supported by capitalism, underscored by heteropatriarchy, has rendered the vast majority of the world invalid. So this principle calls in so many things. One thing that it calls in for me is an element of the Eightfold Noble Path in Buddhism called right view or right understanding. And there's sort of an explanation of that, of what that is, in Buddhist teachings, which goes, a noble disciple is one who has right view, whose view is straight, who has perfect confidence in the Dharma, and has arrived at this true Dharma. Well, anybody that's been through grammar school knows that if you use the term in the definition of the term, you don't get a good grade. So it's a lovely explanation, but it's not all that helpful, because if a right view is a right view, well, then what is a right view? So I want to paraphrase this for our purposes, at least today, by saying that, Dharma essentially means the true nature of reality, the true nature of reality. So then to paraphrase, I would say, a person who practices for awareness is one who seeks the true nature of reality, who tries to look straight into the true nature of reality, has perfect confidence in the true nature of reality, and is constantly seeking to arrive at the true nature of reality. So when I described this event, there's three qualities that I called in. I called in self-awareness, resilience, and love. And I'd like to suggest that these qualities are elements of right view, that self-awareness can create and support resilience, and that self-awareness and resilience can enable self-love. And even more so, I'd like to say that, self-awareness and awareness of this global intersectionality being called in by this principle, that white supremacy supported by capitalism, underscored by heteropatriarchy, has rendered the vast majority of the world invalid. These are not easy things to be with. These require resilience, to look straight into, to be present with. And so our self-awareness as individuals who have been assigned deconstructive identities, but who are not deconstructed, who are in fact whole, that our self-awareness of this is absolutely required to build, sustain, feed, enable resilience. And to bring that together into the practice of self-love. So with Buddhism, in my view at least, we have many problems with language. So the teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha were given orally. That was the tradition at that time. Writing did not exist. Teachings were given orally. People memorized them. And that's how learning was transmitted. And they were given orally in a language that does not exist today, Ardhamagati. None of his writings, none of his teachings were committed to writing during his lifetime. And it was only sometime after his death that this new technology, this crazy new technology of writing came along, and his teachings were recorded in Sanskrit, not in Ardhamagati, not even in the same language in which he spoke them. So that happened in the first century, literally 2,000 years ago. So as I said in my sort of introduction, we've got this landmass of Asia, this continent of Asia, and that is in fact where Buddha was teaching. But it took time for teachings to migrate across cultures and into different areas. And the teachings of Buddha didn't arrive in Europe until the 3rd century. And where I am speaking to you from in the United States, only about 200 years ago, with the arrival of Asian immigrants, popularized about 100 years ago by the beat poets, by the beat generation. So that's a really long journey through a whole bunch of different languages and a whole bunch of different traditions for us to arrive at this moment where we might, as individuals, be inspecting these teachings. So we have to understand that a lot of what we receive, what we learn, is actually the retranslation of the retranslation of the re-understanding of the metabolization of over all these 2,000 years. And I think that gives us permission to look at them freshly within the context of our own culture. In fact, I believe that would even have been Buddha's intention. So one way that I experience problems or friction with contemporary languaging of Buddhism is in relationship to teachings on suffering. So in Buddhism, there is a teaching of the second arrow, meaning the suffering that arises from a reaction or response to an objectively painful experience. So the objectively painful experience, which could be a broken arm, the death of a loved one, the loss of your job, is the first arrow. It's objectively painful. But the second arrow is our reaction or response to it. And Buddhism approaches that because our response is the part that can be greatly impacted, mediated by practice. But living in a disabled body, I frequently find the teachings that I get exposed to on suffering to be very muddled, because while the teacher's instructions might seem to be very straightforward or clear in a step-by-step sort of way, the discussion of what suffering is tends to focus almost exclusively on the second arrow. And I believe this muddled approach has tended to give rise to teachers and practitioners, at least in my experience, who fail to really understand and accept that objective suffering, the first arrow, exists and is an appropriate matter for practice by all beings, both the suffering and those observing the suffering. It is really not hard to encounter contemporary practitioners that seem to say that the physical discomforts, intellectual differences, emotional disconnections, and many other differences that arise from living in disabled bodies are not a second arrow. They seem to say that those things are second arrows. Like we should not practice with them. This can happen in matters of race as well. We need to practice as though we're massaging that away. The same way we would practice with the grief that arises from a broken arm or the death of a loved one. And this is simply not the case. This misunderstanding, this lack of awareness is consequential, not just for disabled people, but also for normatively enabled practitioners. It ignores the intersection of objectively painful and challenging experiences that arise from the real bodies in which they take place. And it creates a collapsing of real perspective and understanding in normatively performing bodies that can lead to interpretation of my experiences as disabled as being invalid. Perceptions of me being disabled or invalid, rather than a whole natural being having a wide range of experiences, some of which are different than maybe someone else's, based on whatever my disabilities are. So, calling in contemporary wisdom on this topic, Kimberly Crenshaw says, treating different things the same can generate as much inequity as treating the same things differently. So treating my discomfort or pain or life difficulty that arises from my disability as a second arrow creates inequity for me. It's treating me as though some of my experiences don't arise in the same way as the everyday experiences of other people. On this same topic, really, Audre Lorde in the Cancer Journals wrote that imposed silence about any area of our lives is a tool for separation and powerlessness. So if I show up in a practice space and I can't talk about what the muscle spasticity is doing to my ability to sit in lotus pose today, I am being silenced. my experience is being invalidated. And Sebene Selassie, in her book, You Belong, says it is the separation inherent in implicit bias that contributes to feelings of not belonging. I can't talk about my muscle spasticity. It's a second arrow. I'm being silenced. I don't belong. These are experiences we have in practice spaces, but also in the world. And they happen with such lightning speed. We don't have the opportunity to unpack all of that, how all of that experience is really affecting us, and why the sense of whatever it is that arises in us, the discomfort, we don't have a chance to unpack all of that to say, but wait, no, wait a minute. Actually, no, I should be able to talk about this. So that is why we are here today. I'm wondering how many disabled people who are with us here today or who are listening at some other time to this recording have found ready access to this type of thinking in a Dharma space, in a practice space where it's okay to say, my spasticity is making it really hard for me to sit today. That's just the normal part of my life. I need to be able to talk about it just like you need to be able to talk about the cavity that you have or your impacted wisdom teeth or whatever. I need to be able to say it. So that's why we're here. We need to create this for ourselves. We need to unpack these confused teachings and these confused ways of thinking in the world, and bring them into our self-awareness. Use them to nourish ourselves, help us to build resilience for those times when these experiences arise for us in the world. And maybe even at certain times, help to rip the delusion off of others who simply don't understand what they're doing. Even post-COVID, when there's an abundance of practice spaces like we're in right now, virtual practice spaces, most of these are just as normatively focused as in-person counterparts. Access needs are not centered. The needs of differing abilities are not centered. And access is taken for granted, excluding people who have specific neurocognitive, perceptual, or physical access requirements. And when we do not show up in practice spaces because they're basically not inviting for us, the normatively enabled participants basically kind of fool themselves into a concept of a general normativity applying to practice, when in fact you just close the door. We're practicing, we just can't practice with you. I just want to say again, the objective experiences of all real bodies is an appropriate matter for practice by all beings, both those having normative experiences and those who are not. So I want to go now a little bit more into intersectionality per se. And I'm just posting into the chat Kimberly Crenshaw's YouTube on intersectionality, or at least one of them. So in this particular video, in this particular TED talk, she describes what led her. She talks about the experiences and thoughts that she was having that led her to coin the term intersectionality, and she describes intersectionality as being impacted by multiple forces and then left to tend to yourself. And this happens in part by what she calls frames. So in talking about frames, she says that when the facts do not fit with available frames, people have a hard time incorporating new facts into their way of thinking about a problem. And then she elaborates on this by saying, when there is no name for a problem, you can't see a problem. And when you can't see a problem, you pretty much can't solve it. And I'm calling that a contemporary explanation of what happens when you don't have right view, when you don't have right understanding. And she's pointing out why right view is an essential component of a healthy and awake life, a healthy and awake family, a healthy and awake community, a healthy and awake society. So going back to frames, for frames, I feel like we could say it's a way of understanding, it's a frame of reference, a tool that we can use to discuss a situation or a problem, a tool for right view. And the tool that we're talking about, that we're spending time with today, is this word she built, intersectionality, for how we do not lead single issue lives. And she's calling that in for we're calling that in for disabled people. She was calling that in very specifically about racism and how racism and sexism can work together. And the principle we're working at today says, yeah, and then there's racism, sexism, ableism, heteropatriarchy, and capitalism. That's a lot of things we're working on, we're living with. These are issues that are impacting our lives. And these are happening in what she calls intersectionality. So, but I'm going to slow down for just a second because I want to talk some more about facts before I do that. So, in Thich Nhat Hanh's book Transformation and Healing, he tells us that going back to kind of what I was talking about Buddha's teachings and how they were transmitted and recorded, he tells us that Shakyamuni Buddha actually resisted efforts to have his teachings codified in a single language, which I'm calling a single frame. He spoke Ardhamagati, but as people dispersed throughout the continent and took some of his teachings with them, they went beyond the places where Ardhamagati was spoken, and people began to try to retransmit them in their own language. Uncle Joe told me this thing, which he translated into the language that I spoke, and now I want to tell you about it. So, but he resisted having a single codification, a single language. And Thich Nhat Hanh says Buddha wanted everyone to be able to study and practice the Dharma in their own language, in their own frame. We need to feel free to take these teachings and bring them into our own frame. I don't really think that Buddha was envisioning how incredibly complicated our modern society is. But at the same time, he was saying, look, people live in different situations and different conditions. They need to be able to practice where they are in what they are experiencing. So I want to call in Larry Ward also around this, around facts. So in an interview that, and I'm going to put all of these, I'm putting links into the chat, but I'm going to be sharing all these links on the blog as well. So in this interview, I'm going to paraphrase a bit what he said. He says, we're being rewired all the time by the society we live in, not just by our body, not just by our psychology, also by technology. And he talks about what a tsunami of changes and experiences and information we are experiencing right now. He says we have to move from information into knowledge and from knowledge into wisdom. But that wisdom has to be body-centered and not simply an intellectual aspiration for wisdom. So I'm taking his word information to be analogous to Kimberly Crimshaw's word facts. We receive these inputs, and then we need to use them to create knowledge. We see that going on quite a bit right now in the US with the attempt to impose new frames, new norms, new ways of interpreting things, new tolerances, a different knowledge base, a different standard. I don't think any of that is moving towards wisdom. It's knowledge. Information can always be translated into knowledge, but knowledge doesn't necessarily lead to wisdom unless it really is centered on an understanding of the true nature of reality, not something that's interpretive or self-serving. So as disabled people, we're swimming in all these sort of factoids floating around about us and all these efforts to create a knowledge systems around them that sometimes ignore us, sometimes do not support us, sometimes attack us, sometimes victimize us. What's important to me in all this is to be aware that none of this is based on an aspiration for wisdom, even an intellectual aspiration for wisdom. And I can still center in my own practice in ways that allow me to move towards the true nature of reality, to represent that, and to call it in for others, to call it in to the awareness of others. So now let's move into that word intersection. So in this YouTube, Kimberly Crimshaw really, she actually sort of visualizes for us like, okay, think about one road traveling this way, another road traveling this way, and where they meet is the intersection. And here we are with all these different identities, and you can sort of say, well, identity A, just using myself, is purple-haired people, and identity B, so that's on the road that's going north, and identity B is disabled people, and that's on the road going west. And where those two roads meet is an intersection. It's where the experience of having purple hair and a disability meet. And like Larry Ward says, this is all happening in a tsunami of other people traveling on these same roads with their same identities, what they're trying to do with the information that they've received, the knowledge that they're trying to create. We are subject to the experience of all that. And we can be deconstructed based on an interpretation of, oh, I can't talk about Laura as disabled. I just need to talk about her as a purple-haired person. Or I can't talk about Laura as a purple-haired person. I just need to talk about her as disabled. It is imperative for us to stay in the awareness that we are not deconstructed, even when systems choose to treat us that way. In that same podcast, Larry Ward says, we don't see ourselves as a whole cloth. We see ourselves as pieces. And we are pieces, but we are pieces of a whole cloth. This applies individually and collectively. I am a whole cloth, and I'm part of the intersection that has all these other identities traveling on it, all these other beings traveling on it. We are a whole cloth together. It can be very uncomfortable. Anybody that thought being aware was going to be a great blissed out experience hasn't really tried to work with intersectionality. It's a beautiful image too, because when you weave a cloth, it has a warp, which is the up and down, and a weft, which is the left and right, just like an intersection. It's the same image as Kimberly Crenshaw invokes with intersectionality. So just to go back to sort of where I started on suffering, If the first arrow is the objectively painful or difficult experience, and then the second arrow is my reaction or response to that experience, then in this complicated world in which we're living in right now for disabled bodies, I'd like to suggest there's a third arrow. There's a third arrow, or to borrow a phrase from my focusing teacher and Wiser Cornell, a tangle. Because I did not choose to be deconstructed. And yet, when all the inputs coming at me tell me they can only treat me as a deconstructed being, that's another arrow. That's not an experience that is arising from me. That's something coming at me that I have a normal and natural response to. First arrow, the thing that comes in. The second arrow, my reaction to it. And the reason that I'm saying, third arrow or tangle is that none of that arrow wouldn't have gotten shot if it wasn't for the first arrow to begin with. That I have a disabled body. It doesn't exist independent of that. So it is a new and additional input that requires me to figure out how to practice to maintain a sense of my wholeness and my integrity. My disability isn't necessarily a problem, to use Kimberly Crenshaw's word, but the invisibilization of my experiences and the requirements around how my body functions is a problem. And shooting that at me is a third arrow. So we are in this space to affirm each other in reconstruction, in reintegration, and to support each other in the development of self-awareness around all the delusion and misbehavior that exists in our culture around concepts of disability. We're here to receive nourishment of our individual resiliency that arises when we share space and energy with beings who have common thoughts and purposes to our own. And to affirm the radical self-love we owe ourselves to enable us to walk awake along this path. So the word Sangha in Sanskrit, it means community. And in this space, I'm inviting us to build community together. So the final thing I'd like to share is that in 1993, in speaking to the Spirit Rock Center in Woodacre, California, Thich Nhat Hanh said, if a Sangha is available in your area, please keep in touch and take refuge there. If the Sangha doesn't have the quality you expect, don't abandon it. Do not look for a perfect Sangha. Stick to the one that you have and try with your practice, your joy, and your peace to improve its quality. This is very important. If there is no Sangha available where you are, then practice looking deeply in order to identify elements of your future Sangha around yourself. Members of your Sangha may be your child, your partner, a beautiful path in the wood, the blue sky, beautiful trees. Please use your talents and your intuition to create a Sangha for your own support and practice. We all need a Sangha very much. A virtual community is not perfect. And I am sending out the call for all of us to try to practice with our skills, with our insights, with our joy, to build what we need with what we have. So with that, I will conclude. I will stop the recording while we're bowing out.